Okay, and welcome back to the latest live vocal improvisation performance thing. Um, actually, ooh, there won't be as much improvisation this time, um, although there will be voice, and I will improvise later on. I thought I'd try something different. I went for a walk earlier just to get some exercise before I did this, and was thinking a lot and wrote down some notes. So I've got kind of the beginnings of some ideas starting to come together and perhaps mean something. So I'll start by reading those. So I'll be looking down at this notebook here. This notebook here. Um, and probably playing with things in a fairly try and stitch together a performance on top of that. So let's see where this all goes. When I walk, I think and I feel there are a mass of ideas and emotions. And it's the same when I'm making art, except usually making art is a slower process than thinking. Um, although improvised sound can speed things up. So anyway, on the walk, there were 7 ideas that all came in rapid succession, which I kept revisiting. Um, or 8 ideas, counting the observation that I just started with. So, first, autism isn't a superpower. Now, like all the other ideas, this isn't fully worked out yet, and I haven't made much in the way of notes on that idea. That's largely because the other ideas kind of begin to fit in with it, and you see kind of how, or at least they fit in with autism, and I guess beginning to hint towards why some people might see it as, you know, if not a superpower, as something sort of out of the ordinary, or at least like an exaggerated version of most people's everyday experience. The second idea is names don't matter, they have no significance or power. They're useful but arbitrary and mostly don't affect how I see the world as I blunder through it. Which it's not wholly accurate, but it's good enough for now. And that I'm aware from various science fiction and more fantasy books that I read when I was a child and had read to me this notion of names having power and true names, right names having a significance. And there are a number of thoughts spinning off from that I could go into, but I'm not sure I can articulate them properly without perhaps causing offence or saying something stupid, and I don't want to get diverted into a bunch of other irrelevant ideas. So that was names. The next 5 ideas, the remaining ideas, more obviously are interconnected with each other. So third then, let's start with how today, and this was probably something that prompted the my making these notes as I was thinking about them. Today has felt like a come down, and for me that would mean specifically a come down from ecstasy, which manifests as a happy sadness, looking back at recent events, recent good times. Um, what I imagine what nostalgia feels like, or properly should feel like at any rate. Now, I haven't taken any substance recently. This high that I was coming down from would be the holiday that I've been on for the last fortnight, and so I've just broke before I'm back in work. The fourth idea is that emotion for me can seem to come out of nowhere, and that's emotion just in everyday life and walking around experiencing the world, and emotion from, say, a piece of art. It can also, that emotion can become invested fleetingly in real events, real objects, real moments. So earlier, as I was walking through a bit of a park, my come down turned into sadness, which then became part of a tree with, which was there. This was an actual tree that was there, but my come down turned to sadness, and that invested in this tree, which had thin branches growing at regular intervals, straight up from either side of a larger horizontal branch. And that part of the tree began making the sound, or in my head began making the sound of bowed strings. And that sound expressed the nostalgic come down sadness, which I was feeling, and I knew that I could add something to that. I could take my voice and add a tone to that bowed string noise that the tree was making. So, fifth, and I think this ties into my autism and perhaps to the first idea, that idea again of autism. I experience particularly visual and auditory confusions, which border on hallucinations. So, for instance, and this is an example from earlier in the walk, I look around and I see someone, I guess in their 30s, with untamed hair, and they pass me by on the pavement. And then some distance away on the other side of the road, hidden by a tree, there's someone in a yellow t-shirt. Look down a side road and see another person walking past a bicycle that's chained to a road sign. Then I look behind and I can see your parent struggling to get a pushchair through a small gap. And all of these things happening in quick succession. And so I briefly, from that accumulated information, manifest someone in their 30s with untamed hair, wearing a yellow t-shirt, pushing a bicycle along the pavement, and I have to avoid them, get out of their way. But then I can't because, well, they're simply not there. So, sixth idea, and this might be how that previous visual and auditory confusion relates to autism, because a lot of stimulus is pretty overwhelming and confusing. I'm always trying to find patterns, rules, meaning to systematize and to understand what's around me. And at the same time, I do dislike rules. I dislike rules in art, and completely unrelated, but I've put it next to it. I know that The while yeah, completely unrelated. So I don't think there's not really any need to go into that. Um, seventh, when I make art, there are a lot of things that I want to accomplish. Um, Two of those which are always present and don't have anything to do with the content of the art are to avoid the arbitrary rules currently in place for whatever that happens to be, if it's telling a short story or writing a poem or um, making a piece of sound. Um, so to avoid those accepted ways of structuring. And the other is to short circuit the thinking brain. I want to cut right to the sense, to the feeling, the emotional meaning at that moment in whatever it is that I'm doing. So that's those ideas, and I can see how they all fit together pretty much, except for the idea about names. I know that it does fit there somehow. I'm just not really certain quite how. think I'll do. That felt pretty good. Happy with that. Yeah, what was I looking up? Yeah. So next week's will, I think, be on Friday as normal. I'll be back in work, so I'll be probably quite miserable, and it'll feel like ages since I did this. So have fun and see you then. Bye.